What's happening here is you have the leaders that want to pick who can win and who can lose say, I don't like this jungle primary where voters get to have the freedom to pick whoever they want. Let's go back to that closed system where our endorsement, our funding, and all of our political power can pick winners before half the electorate even comes out to vote.
On IVN, we've been reporting now for a while that the party leadership was going to do this. And we had people tell us, oh, what are you talking about? Party leaders aren't going to repeal Top 2. You can't be saying this in your articles. We know the landscape. We know how politics works in California. So as the kids say, we know ball.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Man, partisans are on attack. All right, everybody sees all these discussions about the gerrymandering stuff, but they just made a big move in California, as we've predicted a long time. It's you see the usual suspects on both sides that, they hate everything each other does, and they're the worst enemies, except they'll partner when it comes to, let's undo California's nonpartisan primary because we can't. It's too hard for us to pick a winner, right?
I mean, you've been saying it's coming for a long time now, and exactly as you said, here it is.
Just look at the suspect. It's Maviglio, longtime Democratic consultant, right? Makes a bunch of money running initiatives, okay? Partnering with Ron Naring, former chair of the Republican Party. You got Lorena Gonzalez out there supporting it. And I'm not talking bad personally about it. They all do a good job of representing their constituencies, right? But partnering now with the latest to come out is Carl DeMaio, the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, right? So It just goes to show how nonpartisan reform is really about competition, right? And what's happening here is you have the leaders that want to pick who can win and who can lose say, I don't like this jungle primary where voters get to have the freedom to pick whoever they want. Let's go back to that closed system where our endorsement, our funding, and all of our political power can pick winners before half the electorate even comes out to vote. So I know that was a lot, and that's my totally unbiased opinion, of course.
Well, no, what I think is interesting is that up until this point, we had people tell us, because on IVN we've been reporting now for a while that the party leadership was going to do this, and we had people tell us, oh, what are you talking about? Party leaders aren't going to repeal Top 2. You can't be saying this in your articles, and we're like, we know the landscape. We know how politics works in California. So as the kids say, we know ball. So
and don't be surprised if they move fast and they lose all of their pressure, right, on legislators to go and put this on the ballot. And they'll say, well, just put it on the ballot for the voters, right? And what they'll do is they'll run it, that the irony, right? You have folks like DeMaio who prides in being a MAGA candidate, joining it, but they're going to run it as just like they did Prop 50, like they're somehow saving the state from an evil empire, right? When reality is California is only one of 3 states where every voter and every candidate is treated the same. Mm-hmm. So if you use
that's very important to emphasize that, right? It's one of 3 states where every single voter is treated exactly the same, and also every single candidate is treated exactly the same. And they're doing this. They've been sort of building up to it by creating this false narrative, the Democrats anyway, that 2 Republicans are going to wind up in the top 2.
Which
and meanwhile,
is totally
you're getting
manufactured
emails
narrative
from the Republicans saying 2 Democrats are going to be in the top 2. Right. So this is something that they can agree on, right? The Democrats and the Republican parties, the leadership of those parties absolutely agree that they want to have 1 Democrat and 1 Republican. And that's the only acceptable circumstance for them.
And what happens though when this doomsday prophecy doesn't happen in this governor's race? Because that's what the entire initiative that they're putting forward is contingent on, this fear of a 2 Republican general election. Well, when, as we have said on IVN, that is extremely unlikely, it is yeah, sure, there's a slim possibility, but it's a very small possibility compared to the reality, which it's not going to happen. That's what we said. And when it doesn't happen, what's their narrative then?
Yeah, and so because the party's failure to organize and have consensus among themselves, right, they're going to punish the 5.4 million independent voters that fund the primary election and say, oh, you guys got to stay out of this until we figure out our own internal private process. It's right. If you take a step back, I get the partisan frame. I've had a lot of discussions with great legislators, very well-intentioned folks who their knee-jerk reaction is like, yeah, we shouldn't have two from the same party or whatever. And I go, well, if you want more choices, okay, then look to states like Alaska that have advanced like 4 candidates or 5 candidates. But how could you possibly suggest, one, that it's improving the system because you might have unusual circumstances in a few cases to go back to a closed primary system where the outcome is unusual every single time because it only reflects a very small component of the electorate, right? It just doesn't have any logic.
You can't call yourself a progressive and want to revert back to the old system, right? So it's a misnomer.
I'm a progressive, except when it comes to voting rights for people who haven't joined a particular party.
Yeah, I don't.
And I'm going to protect democracy only when it protects my own party, right? I'm only a pro-democracy activist when it comes to being a pro-democracy Democratic Party activist.
Yeah, I was watching an old interview with Shirley Weber, the current Secretary of State of California, who has been against Top 2. So if this comes up, you can almost guarantee that the chief elections officer of California is going to side with party leadership on this. But in the old interview, she said, one, it's unfair to minor parties. Which, again, if the issue is more choice and you just expand the number of candidates that advance to 4 or 5, you look to a state like Alaska. But she also mentioned, it's the only person who's winning under this system is the big money donors, right? The mega donors. And my thing is, like, didn't we just have an election, Prop 50 election, where supporters put in over $100 million from big labor, from mega donors, from all these big groups, and you're talking about big money that somehow Top 2 is the problem when it comes to big money in politics.
Right. And I think that herein lies the problem. Is I don't know, maybe some people would, but a few people probably accuse Shirley Weber of being, having ill motive. She is a very nice woman. She is very, she is certainly very smart, but she's represented the party and represented that this party's in a battle with this other party for the existential threat to our future, right? Instead of looking at voting rights through the eyes of the everyday voter, right? The problem is there's a conflict of interest in that sense. You can be a great Democrat, great representative and stuff, but you can't sit in the Secretary of State's office and look at it through the eyes of the partisan fight between your party and the other party, because you're participating in a different effort. The effort of the Secretary of State is the public's effort to let voters decide. Mm-hmm. Not to stand on the balance of a two-sided party fight that, frankly, everybody's sick and tired of.
Right. And I mean, it's very similar to, I just published a piece about how Prop 50, how our voters actually being told how it's impacted. Because, yes, you hear the national frame, you hear the partisan frame of Republicans did it, so Democrats had to counter, right? And the national framework of who controls Congress. But when you look at it from the individual voter's perspective, these are new ballots. These are new candidates. These are new campaign ads. These are their voting power has changed under Prop 50, and it would change drastically under if they reverted back to the closed system, where now independent voters would no longer have a say. I
think they're probably emboldened a little bit by Prop 50, by how they took away the thing that the people of California had voted for in a free and fair election, to have there be this independent redistricting commission, right?
I think
they just wiped it out. They just wiped it away.
Yeah, and it broadly speaks to more of what the Democrats need to be doing in a lot of different, in that case, it seemed like they were actually taking an action that they're saying, okay, we don't like what happened and we're actually going to do something. Here's an actual action offensively that we're going to take. And I think that's why it resonated with the voters at that time. I'm not saying that,
But
Prop
no,
50,
yeah,
obviously
but
it's worse for the voters in general.
My point is, when the
yeah.
party leaders have a narrative whenever on this, it's always about who benefits, right, between them or the other party. It's not looking at the voting rights of the individual voter. It's not looking at how meaningful their participation is and whether or not you do want all voters, regardless of party affiliation, to have meaningful participation in the process.
Right. Now, therein lies the problem. We have, even when you go to the consult, I hear it all the time. And you see it in some of these articles. These articles are so ridiculous coming out of New York Magazine. And so, top 2 hasn't changed anything in California. Do some research. The top 2 hasn't changed anything. Go spend like an hour in the Capitol and go ask third house people and go ask legislators themselves. There's a bunch of them that would say, I would never be here but for top 2 because my partisan base would have chewed me up in the primary because I worked too much with my other colleagues. Right.
Which is what they want to have happen. So,
and then you can look at academic research from universities like Cambridge who have found that top 2 has led to more competition and more accountable election results within the process. So it's for all these these hit pieces, honestly, on top 2 from places like New York Magazine, do your research because clearly you haven't.
I go beyond that, Shawn, and it's really frustrating because you don't need to run we need to go and do a study, and who do you think has money to go do the studies and all that stuff? Just use your common sense. Yeah. It's not, you could have the exact same legislator legislating under a top 2 system, and what are their incentives, right? They got to go into a primary where everybody can vote. So what are their incentives?
Yeah.
Go back to a closed primary. The exact same legislator is put in a cage because if they think the right thing to do is work with my colleague on the right or come to a consensus or come to a compromise, they can't survive. It has nothing to do with changing parties. It has nothing to do with changing the people who get elected. It has to do with changing the incentives. And if you can't represent a broader swath of the electorate, you shouldn't be a representative.
100%. And that all said, it doesn't mean that we can't make top 2 better. Right. And who's better to make top 2 better than the Independent Voter Project and an organization that we formed called More Choice California, which is going to not only defend the top 2, but we're also going to work to expand the top 2 to make it top 4, to make it top 5. Right. We're going to make it better.
But then also to clarify,
so we're not going to go backward.
Right. And this is not IVP's thing, right? More Choice developed out of a coalition that grew in San Diego with the League of Women Voters, Represent Us, Fair Vote, the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, the Alliance San Diego, who represents immigrant rights groups. The list goes on in San Diego. This was literally a form of improving the system that came together because representatives of those groups sat in meetings every Friday for like a year, arguing about, do we keep a primary? Why do you want to keep a primary? Why is it 4? Why is it 5? What about this methodology? This is a group that did a lot of work to come to a consensus position where we all have kind of our different viewpoints, and hey, in our perfect world, this is what we advance. This is a unique case where More Choice is a coalition that came together and said, we're all striving for the same thing. Let's put perfection in our own minds aside and work on something that we can all agree is better than what we have before.
Yeah.
And that's
where
we're
go backward to something worse than what we have now,
on the incentives point, right, going back to that, you look at a state like Alaska, Republican leaders continue to try to repeal a top 4 there because it changed the incentives. All of a sudden you have, because they can't, control Lisa Murkowski when she wants to go a little rogue from what the party leadership wants her to do, or that, hey, general elections are more competitive now. You have Democrats like Mary Peltola who are actually, being competitive in Senate races or in House races, which she's already run. So it's
and going back to common sense, like you're saying, if it didn't realign the incentives, the parties wouldn't want to change it back, right? So let's just think about it.
There you go. Call a spade, Ethan.
Right? Like exactly. Like there's a reason why they want to get rid of it. It's because it makes it more difficult for them to just decide things.
And I think right now is the time when folks this has been a discussion happening in the background, and Cara led. I mean, what was it, almost 10 years ago? You led one of the major catalysts of the whole movement when you passed ranked choice voting in Maine, right? IVP passed top 2 a little before that in California, before we even knew each other, right? And since that time,
that's how we came together. I came to you, Chad, and I said, okay, so I want to do this thing in Maine. What it's a little different than what you did, but the commonality is that it gets rid of this first past the post voting system, which is killing the country.
Right.
So, explain to me how you did what you did so that I can improve on it. And now I kind of feel like it's not that it's full circle, but now we're going to take this step further, right?
Right.
The 2 reforms combined and have there be more than 2 people that move forward to the general election in California. And just do it like they're doing it in Alaska. And let me tell you what, the partisans, they hate it. The people who are in control of the 2 major parties don't like to not have a system that they can't completely rig to make sure that whoever they want to have elected in their smoke-filled back room, they want to return to that, right? They want to return to having the control. They don't like it when the people have the control. They certainly don't like it when the people who aren't registered as Democrats or registered as Republicans have power in an election, whether it be a primary election or a general election. They like to rig the way that they rig the general election is by figuring out who gets through in the primary election, right? And then trying to shut people out in the general.
Yeah,
this is just what they do.
Yeah,
they're not like
analogy.
Bad people. It's what they do.
It's what they do is they go, hey, everybody needs food. Everybody can have food and everybody can do that. And then the Democrats and Republicans go, okay, here's a hamburger or hot dog, eat. And then they go, oh, you have freedom to eat whatever you want. Well, we eat this hamburger or hot dog, right? And the rest of the world's going, I don't want a hamburger and hot dog. Oh, well, you must be.
I want a chicken sandwich.
Well, you must be
something wrong with you.
Yeah, or you eat the hot dog because you're hungry, and they go, "Oh, see, you really are a Democrat or a Republican because you ate." And it's like, no, I was starving.
No, that's perfect because I was just about to make another food analogy. Like people, I'm looking at results right now. 87% of Americans call political polarization as a major danger to the country, and 86% are feeling exhausted by this division. So we keep getting these candidates that are on completely different sides of the spectrum, like complete, as you'd say, radicals, or just a very, very intense difference in their views. And it's like we have a factory that keeps coming out with these people. These are the candidates that the system is producing, right? And so if
we're laughing, Ethan, because we're so excited that someone who's your age completely gets this. Like you completely understand this. Keep going.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people are so dissatisfied with it. We're not going to change it by asking for different products once they've already come out of the factory. We have to change how it works at the core,
and just to use Chad's analogy here, it's so crazy because we're getting to a point where when you look at polling, whether it's in California or elsewhere, all when you poll independents, close to 40% may lean Democrat, a quarter may lean Republican, but the rest, the 34 whatever percentile, they're choosing to starve at this point because they're so tired of the options that they're given.
Which is why voter turnout decreases, right? They don't see any meaningful difference, which goes back to our point, Cara. What are we doing at the end of the day? It's not about nonpartisan primaries. It's not about ranked choice voting. It's about giving every single voter more meaning to their vote, right?
Mm-hmm. And giving every single candidate who's running in the system more ability and bandwidth to be able to reach out to the broadest amount of voters and get consensus and get the most votes for themselves, always with a majority.
It just drives me nuts. You hear these quote unquote democracy supporters will say, well, we have this great proposal. We should require participation. And I go, is that going to solve the problem because you force the hot dog down somebody's throat? No. You
That's
have
like
to
Russia.
change. Yeah, exactly. I go, do you not see the connection to what you're saying to the way it is in other countries? Oh, well, you're being hyperbolic. I mean, no, I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm using common sense. You can't make somebody want to vote or believe their vote means anything by forcing a hot dog down their throat.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it.
It's like there's only one restaurant in town, and it's so bad that people aren't even going anymore. It's like a voter strike.
Right? Well, and there's no way you could call that a healthy democracy if that's the case. If you have people who are choosing just, I'm not going to eat, right? I'm going to starve myself. You can't call that a healthy democracy. So
what about
but here's the thing is like we do have a healthy democracy because people have in California, these two political consultants, I guess, have started this group and they're going to try to do this. That's healthy for them, right? They think that they're putting forth their idea. We're going to put forth our idea and may the best idea win. And hopefully we're still living in a world where the best idea can win and where we can get the voters' support for the best idea in their own interest and hopefully we can have the partisans begin to see that it's all going to be okay.
Yeah. Cara, this is the point you're supposed to tell people. But in order to do that, we need to have the resources and the support. So visit us at independentvoterproject.org. Join us on social media. Throw us a donation so we can file lawsuits, so we can educate people. So you'll see a video coming out soon that we're encouraging independent voters to participate in the primary election. That I think is pretty cool.
Yep.
Extra funding helps us push it out extra further, right?
Definitely.
Then we also we're doing things like a number of polls to try to get folks to have a different type of conversation about the electorate, right? I mean, our poll came out
our new poll, right? We have a new poll.
But our previous one, we came out and said, look, Becerra's in the lead. At the time, the parties and all the consultants were playing the game of scare tactics of this is it. And we just went and did a poll. We didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
They said, well, here's the results. And everybody's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, actually, our polls are kind of showing that now too. It's like, no, they manufacture the polls in there. So,
yeah.
Ethan, tell us about what you just did in LA.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Speaking of our polls, so we pulled, across the entire electorate, a general turnout model.
Right.
So this should be, we should say this all with the caveat of this is probably not what the primary is going to look like, but if independents would come out and vote in the primary, which
it would look more like a general election.
This is what it would look like, but Spencer Pratt, he's just made an absolute, he's burst onto the scene with these AI ads and these campaigns. We're looking at, he's leading the entire race at 27.4%, followed up by Karen Bass at 23.91%. And then she's very neck and neck with Rahman at 23.36%.
But say this most simply, right?
Okay.
There's really kind of three candidates that could get there, right?
Exactly.
You got Bass.
Yeah.
You got
the incumbent.
You have the Democratic Socialist challenger, right? And then you have Pratt.
Yep.
Right.
Which voters are going to decide which two they get to pick from, right? If you have Pratt and Bass, there's two options for the voters. If you have Pratt and the Democratic Socialist, there's the two options. If you have Bass and the Democratic Socialist, there's two options. Who's going to decide which options are on the menu in the general election?
Yeah.
Whoever shows
voters.
up.
Right.
Independent voters.
If they show up.
If they show up. And frankly, a lot of Republicans who aren't voting down ballot in LA because they're just looking at it's just going to be another Democrat. It's like, you need to exercise your power, which is actually much greater in California's primary unless the parties take it away right?
Yeah, and the parties don't want to tell you that
they don't want you to know how powerful your vote is, right? Because they don't want you to exercise it, which is
and they don't even talk to you. Exactly.
Nobody talks to them. Nobody tells them their rights. That's what we're doing. If you're an independent voter in California, you probably get either a text message or some social ads. That's what we're working on. And it's a real simple message. We don't care who you vote for.
Yeah.
But independents won't be represented until they come out and vote.
That's exactly right.
For anybody.
And they're not going to start talking to you.
Did the poll have anything about the governor's race, Ethan?
Yep. So we did look at the governor's race. I mean, this is within LA city boundaries.
Race, general election?
No.
Or did you look at a different,
in
what did
LA
you look at there?
with a general election model?
Yeah,
right?
in LA with a general election model. So,
who's
this
ahead then?
Yeah, and this is with 64% Democrats, which is, a slightly higher than California in general, but not too much. And it's still Becerra at 22%. And there's really, it's narrowed down the field to, three candidates that are really, could do something here, which is Becerra, Steyer and Hilton. We're showing Steyer and Hilton pretty much neck and neck, and Becerra's around 5% ahead of both of those.
So if this were the primary
And this
model,
is Los Angeles,
yeah,
right?
if this were the primary model and this did represent California statewide, right, we'd have the Republicans with a legitimate argument saying we're going to be locked out of the general election here, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. It would be Steyer versus Becerra. But that being said, I mean, Hilton's very close behind. I mean, I think what's most interesting is definitely seeing Bianco has totally he's fallen off,
collapsed
from his early lead.
Right, and that's L.A., which they're very familiar because he's out of Riverside.
Yes.
So it's not like he's an unknown commodity down there. He's probably has higher local name ID than the British opponent.
The British opponent.
Sorry, Steve, I had to say that.
We love you, Steve. It's okay. We love you and your former country.
We know you have reform at your heart, even though you're out there talking about undoing the top two. We know where your heart really lies, and maybe one day you'll be.
He's with us. He's with us in spirit, right?
Yeah, maybe one day he'll feel like he can be honest and authentic again with the public. But right now he's playing the game, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder what the British media
came to a dinner with us. He sat right next to me at that dinner.
He literally sat at the meetings that started the National Association, and now he's out there on the field. Oh, this is a terrible. Why would anybody? I'm like, if anybody knows, like wants to be honest about the conversation about what nonpartisan primaries and top two are really about, it's Hilton. So I don't know. I'm not attacking him. He's a very smart guy. He's not right. I think there's value he's added to the discussion. But when it comes to him playing, maybe Donald Trump saying that he has to do this for his endorsement, but
could be because Donald Trump hates.
Correct. Correct. And he got Donald Trump's endorsement. So maybe Steve is too weak to stand up to Donald Trump. That would be my guess. Steve Hilton is afraid to stand up to Donald Trump. And so he just parrots his message, even though he knows at its heart it's a bunch of bullshit.
Wow. Yeah, here we are. So that's interesting. Becerra still in the number one spot in Los Angeles. In this governor's race. And what about the other candidates like Katie Porter and Matt Mahan, my favorite?
Mahan has definitely closed the gap with Porter. I mean, I don't know, that could be because they're running a lot of ads within LA. But I mean, he's at a little over 9.5%. Porter's over a little over 10%. Based on
he's closed the gap. I'm actually
surprised
surprised on Porter because she's she's the only woman in the field.
Yeah,
and
what
she
we
did
see
so well in the debates. I have to say, she was so she was brilliant in those debates. She's a great debater.
It's that temperament issue that's really getting her right now, and she's had to devote so much time, even during debates, trying to to defend her record on that in terms of how she's treated staffers in the past, and so that's hurt her for sure. I think with Mahan,
sometimes it really can just be like one or two little things, like the Howard Dean scream, or like this,
you're dating yourself, Cara.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that so well. I was on the phone. It was 2004. I was on the phone with my friend Michael, who was in Iowa at the time. And so it was the primary. And I was working for John Kerry, and so was Michael. We had just won. Kerry had just won. And so we were on the phone and we were talking, but Dean had come close, right? Dean sort of had, even though we had won, Dean had momentum. And so we went to this rally, and we were on the phone watching him on the rally. And he started doing this thing, and then he let out this really bizarre sounding, like unhinged thing, which became exactly, good job. And I was on the phone with my friend Michael, who I've known forever and is, a very experienced politico. And he said, "Did you just hear that?" And I said, "Yeah, I think it's over." He said, "It's over." Like, we knew in that instance that it was this moment in time.
Do you guys know the term? Do you know the term the ick? It's the political ick. That's what it is, right? That's literally.
Well, you're maybe too young for this, but if any of you use Meetup,
I don't even know what that is.
Oh yeah, we do Meetup. Meetup.org. Yeah.
That came out of came out of Dean's campaign. They built Meetup.com to have these little groups across the country meet to support him, and then it turned out like to be a totally non-political platform. right? Because this was the early days of the internet.
It really does also speak to the influence that the media has over public perception within these campaigns. So obviously the media really ran
They
with
kept
that.
playing that
Yeah, they
screen.
kept playing it with.
I got a good one.
Remember Gary Johnson?
I was just
What
gonna
is
say
Aleppo?
Aleppo.
Aleppo moment that
Yes.
crushed him. He was polling as high as like 25 some odd % in some states. He could have made the debates based on the CPD's
So
rules.
he ran
but-
his whole campaign. I know because I helped do and raise a whole bunch of money on this campaign. And the whole message was 15 for 15. Donate $15 so we can get to 15% to get into
Yeah.
the Commission on Presidential Debates, right?
Right.
And lo and behold, once he's like proving that he's at that number,
He was almost there, right?
it
Yeah.
was like
He was
they
on
found
Morning
the
Joe.
moment. They
He was
found the
almost
moment.
there.
Yeah,
they
it's-
found the moment, and then they just went after him and just made it out like, oh, this guy must be so dumb that he doesn't
Yeah.
know where Aleppo was. Like, and they just keep, you say it enough times, then people that are in the periphery paying attention to politics go, oh yeah, he's that dumb guy that didn't know Aleppo. But
Yeah,
wants to run for
the
president.
anchor could have asked him, what do you think of the situation in Syria? But no, he specifically said Aleppo just to
Yeah.
throw him off.
And if you go back and look at the tapes, you can tell Gary Johnson didn't even really understand. He was asking him like to say it again, right? Like Aleppo,
Yeah.
like he didn't know what
Yeah.
he was saying, right? And so I'm not even suggesting like, okay, anything more than just proof that like they'll pounce on anybody that challenges like just the people that are supposed to be at the table.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, I think it's probably now even more. I mean, we saw what happened with the Katie Porter clip of that interview. Like once that enters the zeitgeist, like it's no going away. It's gonna keep popping up for the duration of the election. So yeah, she's definitely
Well, Swalwell's not making a comeback.
But certainly all boats, it was one of those instances where him getting off the election allowed all boats to rise, so to speak, when it came to Democratic candidates, which again is what we said. Like, when Swalwell left, the whole concept of a two Republican general election out the
I guess
window.
we know
Like,
what don't bust the trust meant now.
Yeah, so I just had to fact check, but I saw on Instagram this morning that Stephen Klubeck, the guy who sheltered Swalwell, he just got arrested for
What?
yeah. So I'm not exactly sure what they arrested.
Remember,
him
he
for.
came out and made that weird statement
Yeah.
like, "Don't bust the trust." Like, what was it? That a message to
attempting-
Swalwell that like not
attempting to impede victim or witness testimony. So
Wow, that sounds
released on
juicy.
$300,000 bail.
Wow.
So
yeah.
Wow.
he's
All
blocked.
right.
Yeah.
But of course,
Very,
he's still
very
going to be on the
interesting
ballot
development.
because he didn't exit in time for
Right.
his name not to be on. So he's going to get
Speaking
like 1%.
of who's going to still be on the
So-
ballot, in Maine, we have Janet Mills, our governor, who was running for United States Senate in the Democratic primary, in the RCB primary, dropped out.
Mhm.
And so somebody's texted me yesterday. They said, well, what happens? Her name's still on the ballot, so she's still going to get ranked. Like, what's
Mhm.
going to happen to those rankings? Like, if your name's still on the ballot and you still get a vote, it still gets recorded, even if it's a ranked choice voting election or not, I think, right?
Yeah, well, at least you have rankings, so you're getting some of the second choices and stuff.
Yeah.
Imagine if you didn't have ranked choice voting and that happened. Be a lot worse
Right.
situation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, Cara, you got to take credit for this stuff.
Fine. It's the people of Maine who voted for it over and over again, right? Who rose up against the politicians who were trying to repeal it, which is why, with this Prop 50, that threw me off a little bit, just because I was thinking, like, why would the people go back on what they succeeded in getting, the gold standard in California, the independent redistricting commission. They got manipulated, they were
sold on the national message of fighting fire with fire and balancing the scales and all that. The election was made and completely to be against Trump. So that's what they were sold on.
And now where are they though, Shawn? It's like now where they are
Right.
is the Democrats anyway have basically given up the whole moral high ground. Right? They got down into the gutter. They got rid of the Citizens Initiative that passed overwhelmingly in California in favor of their own, closed, messed up, gerrymandered bullshit. It's terrible, right? And so they
as a result, though, of the nonpartisan primary system, there are a couple of districts where independents may actually have more voting power as a result of these matches.
They may not have known what they have done.
Yeah,
right?
because Yeah, when they
you
tried
pack a
to,
district.
yeah, when you try to move the district to be more your party, you're just making it more powerful for those voters who exist outside the parties to have an impact because,
Right,
like,
because you have a nonpartisan system, right? And that is why, that is the power of it. It's not the end all be all, right? System can be improved, but when it comes to gerrymandering, the number one mitigation tactic for ending gerrymandering is nonpartisan primaries.
100%.
I mean, it's
100% of the time.
Yeah, you look at a race like the California 22nd, right, where David Valadao is currently represented. He's a very popular representative in his district, a Republican, but very popular. But now his district has been withdrawn where the registration shows like 46% Democrat, but Cook still considers it a toss-up, and it's because of that quarter of the electorate that's independent that really likes Valadao. So this is still a toss-up because independents have that kind of power under this nonpartisan system. So it's
well.
I was just reading about Tennessee, and there's now that the VRA is basically overturned by the Supreme Court, right? All of the southern states are going to try to get rid of any Democratic representation in Congress, and so they're canceling elections, postponing elections in the legislatures, and going to redraw maps, and they're going to draw the Democrats out of those majority Democrat districts, majority Black districts in Tennessee and Alabama, and on and on.
Yeah,
they're gonna. It's this whole thing that started in Texas. Right, it is truly been a race to the bottom.
It's been going on forever. Though it just started being so publicly like we're not going to pretend to the people that we're doing we're doing something good.
You're
it was
right.
just
yes.
the first. I mean, look at Illinois. It's been gerrymandered to heck. Maryland, all these places, they've been gerrymandered to heck for the beginning of time, right? And look, so there's an argument on the other side of the VRA stuff is that one party has used race as a sword, not to increase minority representation, but just to increase their partisan power.
Their number of seats. Yeah,
correct.
Absolutely.
Right. And so they've been using it as a sword. All right. Instead of a shield that the VRA, like people would argue the intent was a shield to not prevent people from being elected. Now they're using it as a partisan sword rather than something to protect, the race that it was intended to protect.
Yeah, I was I was asked recently by a friend of mine, like, so Adam Kinzinger, he's a Republican, very kind of big critical of Trump. He goes on CNN, all these other networks, and he's now living in the Woodlands, which is where I was born in Texas. And someone was asking, so why do you think he moved from Illinois to the Woodlands? I said, it's probably because the state gerrymandered him out of his seats. So that's probably why.
One of my favorite podcasters is this guy called Scott Galloway. He's a professor at NYU, and
smart guy.
I was just he's brilliant, and he's not like super political, but I really like him. I like Cara Swisher too. Like that's my favorite podcast. It's called Pivot with Cara Swisher and Scott Galloway. Anyway, this week's episode, Galloway was talking about what would be the best platform for a candidate running in 2028 for president. And he said the smartest thing that somebody can do is say that they're going to basically put just a grid over the United States and get rid of gerrymandering completely. So to do it mathematically, like with a, he really does understand that
if the system was primed for someone, like, I feel like wouldn't the parties, they would never accept someone running on?
No, of course. So it's going to have to be somebody that,
if it's someone coming from outside this,
so that gets us into a whole. We got to do shows on that, but we've been going way longer than we expected to.
We're going to just make it short today, but listen to us.
It's Cara's fault. She's has too many stories.
Too many stories about 2004.
But for those of you at home, there is a lot going on. I hope you're joining us on IVN. We are like super close to launching the new IVN. We are super close to launching our whole statewide turnout program in California. We are super close to meet you because you're going to come to independentvoterproject.org,
Oh,
sign up and reach out and be involved. Said we're an open platform. You don't agree with what we say, write your own story, make your comments online. You'll be able to comment on IVN pretty soon.
Yeah.
And just
That's true.
be a part of it. We are very excited here. As pessimistic as the future may seem, we remain very optimistic and actually think
and
confident that we're at a turning point. We are at an inflection point, and I think a lot of folks are turning their attention to the systemic issues, and we need all of you to stay on board. Tell your friends, tell your family that, you know, there's people out there fixing the system, and we all need to get involved together, and we don't have to agree on everything. We just have to respect our differences of opinion, because the only way they win is by dividing us. So
Well said. Well said.
thank you for joining us on the Independent Voter Podcast, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
see you next week.
Ciao. This is the Independent Voter Podcast, sponsored by the Independent Voter Project and produced by OLAS Media. Remember, you can always find the Independent Voter Podcast or the How It Really Works series at ivn.us. Follow and subscribe at olasmedia.com.
OLAS Media.